Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give it just another minute here, and then we will start things off. Okay, it's 4:02, so we will start. Good afternoon. My name is David Steinberg, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Nathan Rodas is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Microsoft Teams and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider 11 items. The following are 10 items. Order number 203168 to consider removal with replacement of one street tree adjacent to 237 Leavenworth Street. Order number 203169 to consider removal with replacement of one street tree adjacent to 69 Cervantes Boulevard. Order number 203170 to consider removal with replacement of one street tree adjacent to 119 Hancock Street. Order number 203171 to consider removal with replacement of 9 street trees adjacent to 1100 Connecticut Street, Futura Hope Phase 2. Order number 203172 to consider the removal and replacement of 3 street trees adjacent to 5 Joy Street and 380 Holiday Street. Order number 203174 to consider removal and replacement of 1 street tree and 1 significant tree adjacent to 9 Joy Street. Order number 203175 to consider removal and replacement of 4 street trees adjacent to 15 Joy Street. Order number 203176 to consider removal with replacement of 1 street tree adjacent to 403 28th Street. Order number 203180 to consider removal with replacement of 1 street tree adjacent to 200 Clarendon Avenue. And finally, order number 203188 to consider removal with replacement of 9 street trees adjacent to 1100 Connecticut Street, Futura Hope Phase 2. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts of the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determination. When the Director's determinations are made, the Department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows. First, I will ask Public Works staff to speak and present the case. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. And then finally, the department, if the department would like to address any comments. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I'll call you to speak. However, if you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then dial 1, then 0 to put yourself in the queue to speak. You will receive a message that your line is unmuted when it is your turn. If you provided the department with visual materials in advance of the meeting, please let me know before you speak and indicate by the name of the file so that we can pull it up on the screen. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We'll now begin the hearing. So, order number 203168, may I have Public Works make its presentation, please?
Good evening. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry, and we'll have Nathan Rodas, the clerk for tonight's hearing, pull up the June 1st PowerPoint presentation on the W drive. So while Nathan's doing that, here we go. Thank you, Nathan. So let me bring the slideshow to the start here. Hold on a moment. One moment, please. Let's see. Nathan, what I was trying to do is get control over this and view. Looks like I have it. That's not it. Okay, hold on. Stop control view. If we could bring that slideshow to view slideshow.
Yeah, I think Nathan has to control it.
Okay, gotcha. So let's move on. Thank you. Perfect. I just wanted to get full screen. So if we could go on to the next slide. So again, this order is to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 237 Leavenworth Street in the Tenderloin. And this item was scheduled for the May 11th hearing, but was rescheduled due to a clerical mistake on our part. So if we go to the next slide, we'll review a couple of photos of the subject tree. It's a Brisbane box tree, and it has a strong lean over the road. And it's a lean that we can't correct, meaning it's not something that we can prune. We can't remove a branch to improve clearance. There's no way to mitigate this prune in the public right-of-way. And a lean like that within the public right-of-way is problematic because we need vehicles, excuse me, we need vehicles to be able to travel along the curb. And when they lack clearance like that, it actually can damage the vehicles. And that becomes a liability for the city. It's actually not a failure of the motorist to avoid the tree. Motorists need to be able to expect to not hit trees in the roadway. And so here's a view of the tree. As you can see, it's a very strong lean. And I believe I have one more image to show as part of this presentation. We came about this this tree during routine inspection or through a service request. And again, the lean is not something we can correct, and it will be a public safety concern if left unaddressed into the future. I can see fresh sidewalk repairs there. It's hard to say, but it looks like the tree is beginning to experience a root failure. So this is a pretty straightforward removal for Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And when a tree is no longer healthy or sustainable, our code directs us to remove that tree and plant a replacement tree. And the site is free of any utility conflicts, so we will plant the required replacement tree after the tree has been removed. But that concludes the staff presentation for this item, just the removal of a leaning Brisbane box tree, and we need 14 feet of clearance directly over the roadway, and that's just something we can't get. And as you can see, it's a pretty extreme lean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this time? If so, I'm going to put this in Q&A mode.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Okay, so if you would like to speak on this item, please dial 1 then 0, and I will recognize you. Okay, it does not appear that anyone has raised their hand virtually, so I will deactivate the question and answer mode and we'll move to the next item.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Lag time. Okay. Next item is order number 203169. Again, can I please have Public Works speak?
Thank you. This is Chris Buck, Urban Forester with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This next item is regarding the removal with replacement of one Blackwood acacia tree adjacent to 69 Cervantes Boulevard. Urban Forestry staff posted the tree for removal, and during the 30-day public notification period, a member of the public protested, which triggered this item being scheduled for a hearing. And then again, just to repeat, a month ago, we had a clerical error, so we went ahead to reissue this, continue the item from the May 11th hearing. So moving on with the presentation, the next photo shows the subject tree. We have a couple of photos of that, and let me move on there. There we go. So here's the subject tree. It's the tree to the left of the blue home in view. So it's a large tree. Blackwood acacia trees were commonly planted across San Francisco, with a lot of them being planted along Divisadero and Haight Street and Fell. We have not been planting it since the mid-1990s because it's a very fast-growing species that has a lot of problems in terms of poor structure, but also sidewalk damage. When tree roots damage a sidewalk and we need to cut those roots, it can lead to failures. The reason for the removal of this tree, however, is due to poor structure. So the image on the right shows a vertical seam of decay. This is a very weak union within the main trunk of the tree. So about 8 feet, 10 feet up above grade, the tree was topped at one point, and multiple competing stems have regrown as a result, and they're very weakly attached. And our images show that here. So let's go on to the next screen. Let's see. And again, bear with me, folks. For whatever reason, my commands. Oh yeah, there we go. So the image on the far right shows that main stem. The main unions are very weakly attached. And we'll go on to the next image. Pardon me. Nathan, I'm tempted to give you control over this because my keys just don't seem to want to advance this. I think I'll stop control and let you move on to the next slide. So the reason for removal of the blackwood acacia at 69 Cervantes is that it is very, very poor structure that's prone to fail, and with actually a crack in the main trunk. So this main trunk comes up about 8 feet and then divides into multiple stems and is beginning to crack. This could have been a candidate for a 15-day hazard tree posting, but we always err on the side of providing more notification when possible. But we did go ahead and post it for 30 days. Very obvious need to remove this tree due to public safety concerns and the crack that's formed. And again, this tree is replantable, so it'll be a removal with replacement. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, if there's anyone who wishes to
Your
speak,
conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
so if you'd like to speak, hit the 1 key and the 0 key, and I will call on you to speak. Okay, we have someone here, so hold on just a second.
You have 1 question remaining.
Okay, so again, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and again, if you have any audio or any visual aids, please let us know. Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is not really a specific question on this particular tree. It's more on the meeting. We seem to have about a 20-second delay between what we hear on the phone and what we see on the screen.
Yeah, there's a 20-second delay built into the formatting of these. So that's why it might be it's a little slow and give people enough time if they do want to speak so that they can catch up. But it's a built-in safety measure so that we don't end up with things that we don't want as part of the recording.
That may be the problem that Chris is having with the presentation not lining up.
That may be. So it's new technology, so bear with us, but we'll get through the whole thing.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you very much.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, and it doesn't look like anyone else queued up. But thank you for noting that. I'm going to make a note that we make sure we let people know that up front so it's not quite as confusing. Yeah. Does not appear there's anyone else, so we will go out of Q&A mode. And we'll have the department speak to order number 203170. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Chris Buck with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. I'll ask that Nathan advance to the next presentation, which should be the following slide. And noted, that's helpful information to receive from the public about the delay. So I'm going to bear that in mind. And what I'll try to do for the rest of the hearing is just kind of stick with the narrative that we want to cover. And our clerk, who's staffing this remotely, can kind of do the best they can to look through the PowerPoint and kind of push the slides along more or less with what the narrative is that we're covering. It's a little unnerving, but I think we can work together to make that happen. That way I won't just stop a bunch of times. So the next item, as the hearing officer stated, was 203170, a tree removal adjacent to 119 Hancock Street. Urban Forestry staff approved the item, and the public protested during the public notification period. This is also an item that had been previously scheduled for May 11th, but due to a clerical error, we had to reschedule it for today's hearing. And now we'll move on and review a few of the photos. We probably have 3 or 4 images to review. This actually is another acacia tree. So in this case, we have another Acacia melanoxylon, and the tree is in very poor condition. It was recommended for removal by urban forestry staff due to its poor condition. And let's see if we can advance a few of those slides. So Nathan, if you could, take your time going through a couple of the slides. There's not much I need to state about this tree. The tree many years ago was topped by probably the fronting property owner, and what it did is it resulted in very weakly attached new branching. So you can see about 25 feet up these old topping cuts, and the tree tried to do its best to sprout back, but those new branches are very weakly attached and they tend to break off in even mild wind. So this is a tree that we came across during either a routine inspection or due to a service request being placed, and our urban forestry inspector for the area posted it for removal with replacement and posted the notice on the tree for 30 days. And during that 30-day public notification period, we received a protest from the public. So that's why we're here today, is to address that protest from the public. And just to reiterate, again, that site is replantable and Public Works will plant a replacement tree. But that concludes the staff presentation for this item.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Okay, again, if there's anyone who would like to speak on this particular item, dial 1 and then 0, and we'll call on you. And we'll give it, a little bit of time to make sure everyone's caught up. Okay, it does not appear that anyone would like to speak to this item. So I will take it out of Q&A mode and we will go.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
We can now go to the next item, which is order number 203171.
Thank you. This is Chris Buck again with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And let's take a look. Nathan, one thing you might try is, I don't know if you can control making the, oh, there we go. Thanks. So Nathan, this is a lengthier PowerPoint. So knowing that there may be a 20-second delay, I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot driving this, and we'll account for the 20-second delay so I can click and then know that it's getting in queue. And one thing I'm having a hard time doing is keeping that the presentation mode in a large format in front of my computer. Let's see if that does it. So this is a larger tree removal permit application. The others were just regarding a single tree in front of property. And this is regarding Potrero Hope Phase 2, which is a rebuild of low-income housing on Potrero Hill in San Francisco. Public Works has the jurisdiction of street trees. These are trees in the public right-of-way adjacent.
Excuse me,
yeah.
Chris, can I interrupt you for just a second? At least I'm not seeing it coming through. It may be an issue on your end. It looks like just a strip, so it may be that either Nathan needs to pick it back up or possibly.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's just a large blank screen on my part. Look, that looks better. So thank you all. So Nathan, I'll probably have you stick with control, and I apologize to the viewing public. So this is the removal of 9 street trees adjacent to 1100 Connecticut Street. And as we were discussing, it's a project in Potrero Hill. So the specific trees are 4 trees along the 25th Street frontage of the property, 2 trees in the public right-of-way along 26th Street frontage, 2 trees along the Wisconsin frontage, and 1 tree along the Connecticut Street frontage of the property. And this order supersedes 203081, which is originally scheduled for May 11th, but due to a clerical error, we went ahead to reschedule this item. And we could move on to the next slide. I'll begin reviewing the trees that are part of this permit application. So all the in-property trees that are on private property do not qualify as significant trees because it's not property that is held privately, and it's not property that is under the jurisdiction of Public Works. And so in this case, only the street trees require a permit before they can be removed. So if we can move on to the next slide, what we're going to do is kind of walk through these 9 trees with several images of each tree. And Nathan, if you can click on to the next slide, that would be great. Most of the trees all these trees were approved for removal at the staff level by urban forestry staff. There was 1 tree in particular that is an Italian stone pine that we felt was a really great candidate to retain, but due to potential construction impacts, we've been working with the applicant to see if there's any way to work around that tree, to retain that tree as part of the project. That's something we'll be looking at in much greater detail. So here's a diagram showing where the subject trees are located. Note there's 2 X's, and I'll get to those in a moment, but the subject trees again are along these 3 frontages and the 4th frontage along Connecticut. And the bottom screen, you'll see a much larger star with green and a lighter green in the center of that. This is where the Italian stone pine is located, which is where we're probably going to spend a bulk of our time during this agenda item, because the other trees are just trees that are not going to be high candidates for retention, meaning they're species that don't tolerate a lot of root disturbance. and aren't, from our perspective, worth the fight to retain, so to speak. And so if we could go on to the next slide, we'll start going through a number of the slides just to provide a greater context for the overall project. One thing that'll be occurring on site is between Wisconsin Street and Connecticut Street, the extension of Arkansas Street will actually be created in the center of this large parcel of property. And the subject parcel that the Italian stone pine is adjacent to is on the west side of the two blocks. The applicant will explain that the project on the east side, that building design has already been approved, whereas the building design to the west is still in review. So let's see if I can request control and we can go through some of these photos. These are two of the eucalyptus trees on Wisconsin Street. They have poor, and Nathan, I'm gonna give you control. It doesn't like me taking control from you, so I'm gonna let you steer that again. So the two eucalyptus trees don't tolerate a lot of root disturbance, and they have poor structure. So at the staff level, we approved those two trees for removal. We also approved a couple of Corymbia physifolia, formerly referred to as Eucalyptus physifolia trees. One is on one is on 26th, and one is along Wisconsin. So again, those two trees are generally have fair to poor structure, but again, would not be candidates to retain as part of the project. We have in our PowerPoint a number of visuals that show the planning that's taking place in terms of creating the streetscape. So there's a huge amount of replacement trees proposed for this site. All 4 frontages of each parcel would be planted along the public right-of-way. The applicant will know exactly how many. Our urban forestry inspector has that information, but some of my technical difficulties are preventing me from presenting that at this moment. But if we skip down several images, we could look at a few more of these individual trees. Our urban forestry inspection team, what we do when we receive an application to remove for someone to remove trees, we evaluate the trees individually and determine if the tree is relatively healthy and sustainable. Now, in the face of development, trees really need to be outstanding trees or specimen trees for us to really actively advocate for their retention when they're within the close to being within the footprint of a large project where roots will be disturbed. So Nathan, what we probably could do is skim down to maybe slide 28 or 29 to see if we can locate one of the trees that we wish to spend a little more time on. It's the Italian stone pine, and it's probably, again, somewhere around image 30 here. The Italian stone pine is the one that we've had a lot of conversations with the applicant about. And we can move on a few more slides from here. These are showing some of the other subject trees, the Corymbia on 26th Street. But I'd love to show the Italian stone pine on 25th, because I think that's where we want to spend time with the applicant talking about the impacts from construction. Generally speaking, if a tree is a really good candidate, is in really good condition, and could truly remain an asset to the site, we try to advocate for that type of a tree to remain. The Italian stone pine that we've been discussing with the applicant is such a tree, and so we really have been we spent a lot of time gathering additional information as much as possible to understand just what impacts are going to be occurring. There's a number of things that the applicant will discuss, such as grade changes and installation of infrastructure. So if we could go on to a few more slides ahead, as long as we can get an image or two of the Italian stone pine, I can prepare to summarize my comments and in a few minutes turn it over to the applicant. While we're pulling up that image of the stone pine, I do want to point out that 2 of the 9 trees that are subject of this permit application, unfortunately, were removed without a permit. The applicant will speak to that during their presentation. Yes, here's the Italian stone pine on 26th Street. So we can keep this image up. This is the much larger pine tree, and you'll see in the top, it says Italian stone pine on 26th Street. This is the tree where we've had the most conversation with the applicant, trying to understand what the impacts to development would be, to step back the construction in some manner. And that's really where this application for the removal of 9 trees, at the staff level, this is the one tree that we've really been discussing with the applicant. But to conclude my comments on this case, 2 trees were removed without a permit, and those are 2 acacia trees. We have those in the PowerPoint. It may be difficult to show those images today, but we did go ahead and issue the fine for removal without a permit. The fine amount right now in San Francisco is $2,122 per tree, and that the removal without a permit came to our attention during the hearing preparation process last month, and it's something we've discussed with the applicant. I do want to note that in terms of trees that were removed, they were what we refer to as acacia sprouts, meaning they were acacia trees where the stump remained and the tree actually sprouted out new trunks. And so they were about 10 feet tall, maybe 15 feet tall. And my understanding is that the applicant or a contractor on site may not have realized that it actually required a permit and could not be removed. The large trees, the trees that are the subject of this permit, 7 out of 9 of them are all remaining in good condition and no damage has occurred to them during construction. But again, 2 of the 9 trees have been removed without a permit. So in our resulting decision, Mr. Steinberg will just have to reference that 2 of the 9 were removed without a permit prior to the hearing, and that administrative fine has been issued for those 2 trees. Again, sorry for some of the technical difficulties, but we'll now move to wrap up staff presentation and forward the microphone over to the applicant at this time.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
And David, you may be on mute. I haven't been able to hear you.
You are correct, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, so if the applicant, I have one person, hopefully this is the applicant, we will take your comments first. So
you have 1 question remaining.
Okay, go ahead. Is this,
Hi, this is Marie DeBoer with Bridge Housing. We're the applicant and the master developer of the Potrero project. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and give a brief overview over the project and then talk about the specific trees that are on this permit. We also have Mark Hale, our civil engineer, available. I don't know if he put his name in for comment, but he's a portion of the presentation. So hopefully he has done that. So Bridge Housing is the master developer for the Potrero project, and we are a nonprofit developer. We were selected over 10 years ago to redevelop this existing public housing project on Potrero Hill. And I don't know if you guys can bring up the PowerPoint presentation that we submitted. It's called Potrero Hope SF.
We'll give it a shot. Go ahead and you want to keep talking while we're trying to do that.
Sure. Sure. So the PowerPoint will show will provide an orientation for everyone of where the Potrero project is located. And while we're waiting for that, I'll just keep walking us through it. So this is the second phase of the Potrero project. The first phase was completed last year. It was called Block X, and it consisted of 72 housing units, affordable housing units. Phase 2 is the site that we're talking about right now in regards to the trees. And here it is, perfect. So this is the larger outline of the Potrero project. And if you see the green outline at the right bottom corner of the yellow outline, and that was the phase 1 project, and directly to the left of that is the phase 2 project. You can go to the next slide. So Potrero is a Hope SF redevelopment of an existing public housing site. The existing units are being replaced by approximately 800 affordable housing units, of which 75% are public housing replacement units, and the redevelopment also includes approximately 800 market rate units and all the infrastructure that's associated with the new housing elements. The infrastructure work is being done on a phase-by-phase basis and is very extensive. It includes the creation of a new street grid system. As Chris mentioned earlier, phase 2 is one large city block. We're dissecting it in half and are creating an extension of Arkansas Street. And if you advance the slides, maybe you're already doing that. Please move to slide 4.
Yeah, they're going through, so you're just going to have to. It'll sync up. So I would just do your presentation, and we'll keep moving the slides ahead.
Oh, here we go. Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to point out some of the highlights of the project. We are including some retail in later phases. There's going to be a large 25,000 to 35,000 square foot community center. We have a large daycare that's being built of this phase that's currently being considered for the tree removal. And overall, the Potrero redevelopment will include approximately 3.5 acres of open space for our residents. And just keep going through the slides. I wanted to highlight some of the community benefits for the Potrero project. As I already mentioned, the public infrastructure improvements are a benefit, and they include streets, curbs, gutter, and sewer replacement. A lot of new intersections are created, new pedestrian safety improvements, bicycle path improvements, as well as transit infrastructure improvements, and of course the creation of an updated utility infrastructure for water, sewer, streetlights, stormwater, and electrical systems. The community-based improvements include pedestrian plazas and pathways as part of each of the housing developments, as well as bicycle improvements within the newly created plazas and parks that are part of this development. Open space that I just mentioned, 3.5 acres in total, includes some mini parks and a community garden and a larger park as part of the rec center that we're building of a later phase. And phase 2, the phase that's currently being considered for this meeting, includes a 6,000 square foot childcare facility. And the rec center, as I mentioned, will be part of a later phase. Perfect. The slides are catching up with me. There's a slide coming up that's showing a view of the neighborhood core. Once constructed, it will include the community center, It will also include the retail that will all be at the center of the project and the main community park. The new street grid system will connect Potrero to the surrounding neighborhood. The first phase I introduced earlier, called Block X, or as completed, it's called 1101 Connecticut, consisted of 72 new homes and was completed last year. Phase 2, the development that's in front of us right now, will be split in the middle, and a new street, Arkansas, will be created. On the east side will be Block B, which is the next affordable development. It will consist of approximately 160 new affordable units for existing residents and some new residents. And on the west side of the city block, there will be approximately 160 to 200 market rate units that will be improved there. And as part of the phase 2 housing developments, we are creating new infrastructure that includes, new street Arkansas extension that I mentioned, new intersections both on 25th and 26th Street, and new utility improvements. The slides are moving very slowly, but I'll just keep working through my notes here. I just wanted to highlight again how the street improvements, the public street improvements, are designed to integrating the Potrero neighborhood into the existing neighborhood by creating a streetscape that's more of a grid. It'll fit better into the surrounding and existing neighborhood. And with that, we're moving on to the phase 2 tree map, which is lagging a little bit behind here. But we have a map of all the 10 trees that are on this application. I think we saw it earlier when Chris was walking us through the project. There's a total of 10 trees. And if you look at, once we get there, if you look at the site plan at about 6 o'clock, is tree number 1, and the trees are numbered clockwise going around the whole site. As I mentioned earlier, these 10 trees were on our application, and per the tree map detail number 2, which is the following slide, 5 of them are currently still posted and confirmed to be in the public right-of-way. Those trees are numbers 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. As Chris mentioned, 2 of the trees were erroneously removed by our contractor. There was an error made, and there was just I think a confusion. We did receive the fines for the 2 trees that were removed by accident, and we did pay those fines. Perfect, we're catching up. So the next slide, you'll see a little bit more in detail where the trees are located, and the images on the right that you see here are pictures of each of the trees. And then lastly, below there is a table. We have details of all of these shots that shows the name of the trees, what type of trees they are, and the sizes of the trees. All of the trees need to be removed, or we've applied for the removal in order for our infrastructure work to move forward. All trees except for tree number 10 need to be removed due to infrastructure-related grading. Tree number 10 will also be impacted by grading, but not infrastructure grading, but the building, grading for the building itself that will be constructed on that site for the affordable housing building. We're putting a new intersection in the middle of 26th Street. In order to get the flat section for the intersection, we have to do a large amount of grading. And the tree location has about 2 feet of cut coming out. Trees don't do well when there's cut in the soil. And we really have no choice with this infrastructure but to unfortunately remove these existing trees. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do the street improvements as designed. And from what I understand from our civil engineer, and he can probably speak separately to that, is we're not able to designed these intersections very much differently. If they were to be brought up in elevation, the other side on the way downhill would have to be graded up, and we're already running the slope at a maximum slope for the street to be a safe passage for buses and fire trucks and in general driving. Yeah, we're approaching the maximum limits there, unfortunately. We don't have the latitude to raise the intersection and make that downhill portion, it would make the downhill portion even steeper. So it's a constructability issue for the project, and because of that, we are requesting the removal of the five remaining trees that are posted. This concludes my presentation. I think our civil engineer wanted to speak specifically to the grading that surrounds these trees, but I'm not sure he's available to speak.
Okay. Oops. All right. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to call on the next person, and hopefully it is the person that you wanted. Because we are on a delay, I'm being a little generous with time, but be mindful of the fact that we don't have, I think the call terminates it at 6 o'clock. So
you have one question remaining.
You should be ready to go.
Yeah, this is Mark Hale. I'm the civil engineer for bridge housing for the project, and I just wanted to, with this slide up, well, if you go to the grading plan side, not the slide, not the table, just the emphasis on this one is to show where the future improvements are and kind of the darker shaded areas with a irregular edge to them. Those are the limits of the grading. So on that slide, you can see that the grading extends out through where all of the trees are. And with the exception of number 10, and as Marie stated previously, the number 10 is the building design has developed far enough that we know that that tree will also be in the way. It wasn't one of the posted trees anyway. And then if possible, to emphasize what's going on with the grading, if we could go to the last slide, the 20th slide in this set, and on that it shows the street profile for 26th Street, and what's going on with it is the existing street. There is an existing street that comes down at a fairly steady grade, but when we construct the new intersection with Arkansas Street, we need to table that intersection flat for pedestrian access. And so in order to do that, we have to come down steeper from Wisconsin in order to get down to a spot where we can flatten out the intersection for there you go, and where we can flatten out the intersection for a safe pedestrian crossing at that Arkansas intersection, which means on the west side, the uphill side, we have about 5 to 6 feet of cut on 26th Street, and when we get to the downhill side of the intersection, we have a similar amount of fill, so we're above grade there. And what that translates to for that Italian stone pine is we are cutting down the existing grade roughly about 2 feet where the existing stone pine is. And that existing stone pine is just off of the back of the sidewalk, the future sidewalk. And so we'd have to cut down roughly 2 feet right where the existing tree is. And then additionally, when the future building comes into play, the new building will be the building setback is 5 feet from the back of block, so it will be further compromised on that when that building gets developed. And in light of that, we just felt that there was no way to save the tree, and we can't come down any flatter on the uphill side above Arkansas Street because it makes the downhill side too steep. It exceeds public works standards. So that's all I wanted to add to Marie's presentation.
Okay, thank you. If there are any other individuals who wish to speak to this item, please hit 1 and 0 on your phone, and we will take your comments.
And David, this is Chris Buck again with Public Works. While we're waiting for that, I had one comment about...
You have 0 questions remaining.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I had a comment just to clarify that in the diagram that the applicant presented, tree number 10, which is in the upper right image, is beyond the public right-of-way. So when Marie and the applicants referred to 10 trees, tree 10 as pictured in their diagram is beyond the public right-of-way, so it does not require a permit. And so that brings us down to 9. Which is the subject of the application. But just to clarify, their tree number 10 is not part of the subject application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, does not appear that anyone else wanted to speak to this item, so I will...
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
I will hand it back to Public Works for item order number 203172.
Thank you. So this is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry, and regarding order 203172 for the removal and replacement of 3 street trees adjacent to 5 Joy Street, also known as 380 Holiday Street. This order supersedes order 203082, which was previously scheduled to be heard on May 11th, but was continued due to a clerical error for today's June 1st hearing. We could move on to the next slide. So Joy Street is referred to in our industry as a paper street, meaning it's a public right-of-way, but it appears as an open space, and we're famous for these in San Francisco, like Greenwich or Filbert Street stairs. Throughout the city, we have a bunch of these in Noe and in Castro. So it's an unusual site in that right now it looks like an open space area, but as our diagrams will show, there are individual parcels that that open space area is essentially broken down into. And so if we could go, this is a good slide to be on right now. This shows for 5 Joy Street, we had multiple postings for this this site, 5 Joy Street. We had trees posted in December through January, and then again, additional trees from February to March. Our urban forestry inspector for this case has been Stephen Keller. He's one of our more senior inspectors, so he's been handling the posting and notifications for the Joy Street projects. And let me see if I can get a better view here. Nathan, it looks like for the moment the screen is just so you must be trying to pull it up, the presentation. So what's interesting about the site is that the houses that are proposed to be built obviously don't exist yet, and so it looks like an open space area. What our inspector's done, Stephen Keller, is he really worked closely through multiple site visits to meet with the applicant and to agree to protect certain trees that would remain on site. And so that's what we have in our presentation. And this image showing which trees are proposed for removal. This one is 7 Joy Street. So throughout the permitting process, both 5 and 7 Joy Street were used to identify the location of the trees adjacent to this property. And these notices were posted on our website. There's one tree in question that a member of the public is concerned about was not posted. It was posted physically with the notices on site as required. And there was one tree that was not posted on our website. So we do now post our proposed removal notices on our website. Unfortunately, in terms of it being a dispute or a reason to rehear this item, right now the posting of tree removals on our website is more of a commitment that we're making to the public that's internal and not yet a requirement written in stone in our code. However, we're committed to providing as much transparency as possible. And one pine tree wasn't included in the photos and the information that was provided on the website. However, our inspector has assured me he has evidence to show that the trees themselves were properly posted. So it was really just an issue of a courtesy notice not being on the website, whereas all the other trees were actively posted on site and part of the posting notices. So we're going to have these 3 items as separate agenda items this evening. And again, generally it's always good for us to just step back and explain that if tree is relatively healthy and sustainable, to be consistent with how we handle similar cases, our urban forestry team denies the request to move relatively healthy trees, and we work to retain trees that are in good condition and that have a reasonable chance of surviving. So on this this slide shows 5 Joy Street, the small pine tree with a really extreme lean, weak roots, and the growth is subordinated by the oaks nearby. So the oak in the foreground is the tree that would actually work with the applicant to retain, but not the leaning pine in the background. And so that's what we have for each of these sites, are trees that we at the staff level feel were reasonable to approve for removal, and then other trees that we wish the applicant to retain as part of their project. Again, we're going to have 5 Joy Street as a separate agenda item from 9 Joy Street and 15 Joy Street. And I don't know, Nathan, if it's possible to go back to any of the more photos on 5 Joy Street. I think what we'll do following a hearing is that we could certainly forward our presentation as a PDF format to those interested in the public, just to kind of thinking out loud what we could do to make sure that members of the public who are interested have access to our documents and the visuals that we had intended to show this evening. So when a new building is constructed, it triggers a tree planting requirement. So in addition to trying to preserve certain existing trees adjacent to these properties on Joy Street, it also triggers a tree planting requirement, and it's 1 tree per 20 feet of the public right-of-way. One important thing to note for these cases on Joy Street is that Stephen Keller, our inspector, pointed out that several trees, if it's possible to, even trees that we recommend for approval, like the large pine tree, and then there's a tree as well, that those trees potentially be retained until such time as it's absolutely necessary to remove them, so that residents along the block across the street can have some form of mitigation from the dust and disturbance that constructing new homes will cause. So one comment from the public was just that, could we retain trees, even if ultimately approved, if the project's being constructed in a manner in which access along that right-of-way is not necessary? If they're constructing from top to bottom, can the removal of some trees, if approved, just be delayed until they're physically have become an obstacle? So those were a lot of the key points as part of the application to remove trees at 5 Joy Street. And if we can't pull that up, I think at this point that would wrap up our staff presentation, and we'll hear from the applicant. And also we have documents to pull up from the public as well. So the public will call, and then we'll pull up their documentation that can be part of their testimony. So that concludes the staff presentation for 5 Joy Street.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, did you say there's an applicant that was?
Yes, there should be an applicant who would be calling in to kind of guide us through their application.
Okay, in that case, if the applicant is on the line, if you would click 1 and 0 on your phone, we will try to recognize you. Wait here. I don't see anyone yet, but I know it's there's a lag. So we'll wait. There we go. Hopefully this is the right person. Okay.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Well, we had someone a second ago, and it looks like they dropped out. If you are on the call, if you would click back in and dial 1, dial 0, and we'll pull you up. We do have the public presentation up again. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this is you.
You have 1 question remaining.
There we go. Okay. Hopefully that worked. If you could identify yourself, with the applicant.
Yes. Hello, it's Stephen Antonaris. I'm the architect working on number 5 Joy.
Okay, there we go.
And unfortunately, I have my own technical difficulties. The one graphic I have, I can't make visible. I did email it in, unfortunately, just earlier this afternoon. But it shows the extreme excavation at this pine tree. The lot in question, is pie-shaped, and it narrows toward the tree, which is elevated about 16 feet above where the finished floor is going to be. So the tree will be undercut close to 4 feet to the trunk and 16 feet down. So it's quite an exposure to the tree. The overhanging branches of the pine tree will have to be largely, about a third of the overhanging branches would have to be cut back in order for the building to be there. So now I heard what you said earlier about the neighbors preferring to have the trees as much as possible left in place, in the hopes that they could remain there, providing protection from dust. But this tree, I'm afraid, actually would either die shortly after being excavated so close to, or could collapse into the. There it goes. Great. Yeah, that shows. We actually had a 3D LiDAR scan of the entire site to get much accuracy about the scale of floor there. And you see the tree there in the shaded light green. It's a pretty accurate scale of the tree is where it's placed in relation to the house, both in the plan section and this 3D scan. It's like so. Excuse me, sir,
You're, oh, sorry. You're kind of breaking up on me. I don't know if it's just me or if it's others, so you could try speaking up or.
Yeah. So what do you think the graphic? Are you seeing PDF on the screen?
Yeah, I cannot hear you again. I'm going to ask you to hang up, dial back in, and I will recognize you again. I'll pull you up again, okay? So if you would mind hanging up and dialing right back in, and then hit 1 and 0 again, okay? Okay, so hold on just a second. We'll wait for him to dial back in.
And David, this is Chris Buck with Public Works again. While we're waiting there, I could hear, what he was talking about. This is one of the subject pine trees for this application regarding the potential root excavation in the hillside, as what the diagram is showing. When we're done with his testimony, there should be a member of the public, and we'll go back to the slide before that talked about their concern regarding the posting requirement for this. So that's something we can do after the architect is called back.
Okay, yeah, doing it right now. Hold on.
Sure.
Hold on. Sorry about that. I am pulling.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Okay, am I back on?
You are back on. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I can hear much better. Hopefully everyone else can as well.
Okay. I pretty much finished with what I was pointing out, and the graphic does a lot to explain it. A significant number of the overhanging branches of the tree, which give it a lot of its shape, will have to be removed in order for the house to rise above the ground. That arc that's slightly pink or red shows that. That's pretty much it. The excavation, the point being made here is the excavation's very deep next to it. We'd have to probably shore the tree up to make sure it doesn't fall in to the excavation pit. And it's just a scary proposition. So we're not sure the tree will survive, and the effort to save it might be a burden on the contractor. So we'd like to have this tree be able to be removed. Okay. Although we could understand maybe saving it for parts of the construction if needed to mitigate the dust, as you said before. But, okay, I think that's it. I'm done.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
I don't. We're going to open it up for additional questions, so thank you very much. I will take the next person.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Okay. Go ahead and identify yourself if you would, and go ahead. Hello? We have the next person who wanted to speak. You should be unmuted. Hello? Let's see. If the last two digits of your phone number are 60, you are on the microphone right now and on the clock.
Oh, sorry. This is Joe O'Brien. I was just calling in on behalf with Stephen. So I think he covered everything on us.
Ah, okay. And thank you. I will go to the next person now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, next person's being queued.
You have one question remaining.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Thank you very much. You
My
are
name's Lance Carnes. Yeah, I was on, but I got off somehow. I have some slides I sent in, called Lance Carnes slides for 203172.
All right.
You locate those okay?
The clerk is looking for them right now.
One of them will come up in a moment. The one that says 6, order number 203172 will be up in a moment.
Okay. Yeah, it's up. So you can go ahead and start speaking, and the video will catch up with the audio.
Okay, so I presume my time is now 0. My name's Lance Carnes. I'm calling about the removal and replacement of 3 trees adjacent to 5 Joy Street. When I actually protested this, it was called 7 Joy Street. The main point I want to make is that one or more of the trees in this order were not properly posted for removal, and that the order is therefore invalid. The basis of my thing is on the slide. You should see there's a Public Works Code Article 16 bit there on tree removal, and it said removal of street trees. No street tree shall be cut down or removed by the department unless A, the department gives 30 days prior written notice to the owner of the property, and B, 30 days prior to the removal date, the department notifies all interested San Francisco organizations and, to the extent possible, extent practical, all owners and occupants of the properties near the subject trees. In mid-November 2019, DPW established a tree removal website, which is an interested San Francisco organization, so it would apply under Part B above. Only 2 of the 3 trees in this order were posted there. One was not. One tree listed in this order was not properly posted, is not valid for consideration at this hearing, and the order is therefore invalid. I'd like to correct Mr. Buck, who said that the website is a courtesy to the public. Actually, it was set up as a response to an ADA, Americans with Disability Act's requirement. So it's not a courtesy, it's actually a legal requirement. Next point I want to make is Public Works makes a false claim that all trees are listed on the website. And just want to say that today, after all our discussions over the past several weeks, this is the first time I heard you say that actually 1 tree at 7 Joy Street or 5 Joy Street, whatever you want to call it, you said 1 tree was not posted on the website. In the past, you asserted that it was. So we're making some progress. The next part, I'm not sure. I'm sort of behind on I'm flying blind here. I can't bring up the Microsoft Teams thing. But if you go to the next part, there's a email at the top of the page. Starts off with Buff Inspector wrote, your argument that the trees were not properly noticed on the website is not valid. 5, 7, 9, and 15 Joy Street are all separate permits and parcels, and each parcel was announced separately on the website, as shown on your removal archive. In each description, the number of trees proposed for removal was mentioned. Just below that, I don't know if you can see it on the overhead or not, but it says removal archive, and it lists 4 trees, which are the only 4 trees listed on the website. And you'll see that 7 Joy Street has 2 trees, and there's not a 3rd tree there. So for that reason, I believe that this order should be declared illegal and not considered at this hearing. If you move on to the next page, you'll see a website image. It'll say District 9 at the top, and it says location Joy Street. And then at the bottom, it says posting period 12/18 through 1/16/2020. On the next page, you'll see the other tree that was listed, Joy Street, site number 3, posting period 2/21 through 3/22/2020. So that pretty much is all I want to say. If members of the audience would like to look at this document at their leisure, you can go to the website savesftrees.org. That's savesftrees.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the hearing, the recording of this will be available later. So the presentations that were given will be available. Doesn't look like there is anyone.
You have 0 questions remaining
left in the queue. So I will close. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I will allow if the department would like to address any comments that were made. You can do so at this point.
Thank you, Hearing Officer Steinberg. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. I jotted down a few notes. For sure, we're here to take public comment and listen closely. So we'll take a closer look at the information provided by Mr. Carnes. We do appreciate it. And if I may have misspoken in saying that as a courtesy, we can split hairs over that. It's vital and it's important. We want full transparency. Absolutely, we're committed to that. So we'll take a closer look, and then as the hearing officer, we'll provide you in the next few days just maybe a brief explanation to clarify. It probably would have helped if I had our urban forestry inspector speak to that item. So just for future reference, we'll probably have our inspector who's handling the details speak to it. I probably did not do a great job this afternoon, so I do apologize for that. But we will forward to you kind of an official response on behalf of Bureau of Urban Forestry. And just want to note that the point is well taken. Generally speaking, we're not hearing public protests from anyone who lives on that block. Everyone who's on that block physically saw notices. So we can definitely split hairs. The rules are important. We want to win trust. We don't want to lose it. But again, we weren't feeling like the public didn't get notified. So we'll address that. But again, respectfully appreciate the feedback from the public because we are trying to gain public trust. So thank you.
Thank you. It appears that there might be someone else who wanted to make a comment. So if that's the case, I will.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Or possibly 2 people. So go ahead. You're on.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. My name is Joe Butler. I'm an architect and member of the AIA and a former vice president of San Francisco Friends of the Urban Forest. I've walked the stairs to see the trees, and I would respectfully request that the juniper shrub in slide 12 of the DPW presentation, off by itself south of the Joy Stair landing, not be removed. It's apparently to be removed because it conflicts with the front porch of the house at 15 Joy, But if you look in the site plan, you'll see that that front porch has other places it can be on the right-of-way, and the tree would not need to come out in order to accomplish a front porch that is encroaching in the public right-of-way. Further, I'd like to ask that the removal of trees on Joy Street be conditioned upon several conditions. One, that a temporary 6-foot-high construction fence that's open to view, light, and air, like a chain link fence, be erected along all 4 lots, frontage on Joy Street, to protect the trees from compaction of soils. 2, that there's no storage or handling of materials, waste, soils, or equipment on the Joy Street right-of-way. If the contractor wants access to the stair for movement of his subcontractors and employees, fine, they could put gates in the fence that they could use, but it should be limited to pedestrian use only. 3, that the Joy Street stairway itself, as a required means of egress for all the people who do live there, should be maintained at all times, top to bottom, during construction, consistent with the California Building Code. 4, that the juniper be retained, as I discussed. 5, that you specify the size of the replacement trees. I understand that 7 trees are to come out, and all I've heard or seen in the information is 2 coastal live oaks that would come back as replacements. And consistent with the 1 street tree per 20 feet, there's got to be more planting coming than that. So finally, I would ask that the construction disruptions here for residents be phased, that the care shown in the phased tree removals and planting before construction starts, and respecting their stairway as a means of egress, and all of its plantings during construction, it would go a long way to build trust with the project sponsor and the neighbors. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Okay. Looks like we possibly have one more person, so bear with me for a second.
You have 1 question remaining.
Okay. Next person available to speak?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm here to just support the neighbors and the previous speaker. Joe, thank you very much. That's great. Just mentioned earlier in the meeting that neighbors didn't protest, which is correct, but there were some emails, and we did have some requests that the previous speaker just elaborated on. And I'm here to support that, and thank you guys for considering that. And the neighbors who do have interest, and which ones were just mentioned. So an additional thanks here from the neighborhood. Thank you very much. So my name is Hendrik from 16 Joy Street. You should have gotten an email from 12 Joy Street as well as 18 Joy Street. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I do not believe we have anyone else.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, so I will go on to the next item. I will close this item and make my recommendations to the director. Next up is item number, what are we on, 203175?
That's correct.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Chris Buck again with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And just a note for the record that a member of the public who spoke previously, Joseph Butler, did provide visual diagrams that supported his public comment. So just forwarding to the hearing officer that information will be provided to you as part of the hearing. It didn't get shown during the presentation, but it will be forwarded to you and reviewed. Thank you. So yeah, if we can back up the presentation to 9 Joy Street, so probably just up, we're on, yeah, there we go. So in a moment, 9 Joy Street will pop up on those viewing the hearing. So this is the removal and replacement of 1 street tree and 1 significant tree adjacent to 9 Joy Street. Staff has approved the removals and the public has protested. This order supersedes Order 203082 for the May 11th hearing, which was continued due to a clerical error. And one thing as we go on to our next slide, just to speak briefly about what a significant tree means. It's a jurisdictional definition in our urban forestry ordinance, Article 16 of the Public Works Code, that identifies trees that are on private property but within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. If it meets just any one of 3 size criteria, that it qualifies as a protected tree, as if it were a street tree, and be subjected to the Urban Forestry Code and our tree removal permit process for street trees. The idea being that trees that are near the public right-of-way are definitely benefiting the public at large, not just the immediate property owner. And so on this slide, we're looking at 9 Joy Street, the removal of 2 trees, again, 1 in the public right-of-way and 1 technically within private property, but still within 10 feet of the public right-of-way. And if we go on to the next image, both trees were posted with notices, and these are 2 privet trees. It's a Ligustrum lucidum is the Latin name for privet trees, and again, 1 is in the public right-of-way, and 1 is just inside the property line and qualifies as significant. This diagram shows a 9 Joy Street in the center, circled with a red, and showing 2 trees, 1 tree inside the property, 1 in the right-of-way. And those are the 2 subject trees as it relates to 9 Joy Street. If we move on to the next slide, I'm not sure if there's much else we have to say about this. This is one of the privet trees. So basically, privet trees can be very shrubby, multi-stem. In this case, the original tree might have been removed, and these are sprouts that have resulted over time. And we did receive feedback from the public about, working with the project team or the developer to retain the tree as long as possible on site so that the tree can kind of act as screening during construction. And so if you view that image of the tree, you can really see, if you were across from that tree, that it does provide screening, and it really could provide some mitigation to construction activities. And if we move on to the next slide, I believe it's the next image. This is the one that's just inside the property line. Again, kind of a shrubby species in this setting. Certainly not a tree that is worth Bureau of Urban Forestry staff advocating that the property owner work around in some manner. And this is what it is. It probably just barely meets the criteria as a significant tree. It's very easy to meet that criteria. It just needs to be 1 of 3 size criteria: a trunk in excess of 12 inches in diameter, a height greater than 20 feet, and the one that's very easy to achieve is a canopy width 15 feet or greater. And so that's the 15 feet. If you go 7.5 and 7.5 feet from center, you're achieving significant tree status. So these are the subject trees. If we go on to see if there's another slide on this, that would be great. I don't think there's much else. No, that concludes the staff presentation here. The removal of a significant tree on private property, removal of a street tree in the public right-of-way. Our recommendation is, instead of 2 sort of shrubby-like bushes, to replace with 1 large stature tree at the conclusion of the project. So it's removal of these 2 trees with replacement of at least 1 large stature tree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If there is any member of the public who wishes to speak, please dial 1 and 0 on your phone and we will recognize you. Give it a little bit of time here to see if anyone wants to, and we do have people. Okay. Go
You
ahead.
have 2 questions remaining. You have 1 question remaining.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Lance Carnes here.
Yep.
Can you hear me okay?
That's great. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, when you announced it, you said 203.175. I think this is 203.174. Is that correct?
You are correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We skipped. Yeah.
With removal and replacement of 1 street tree, 1 significant tree, adjacent to 9 Joy Street. Again, my main contention is that 1 or more of the trees in this order were not properly posted for removal, and that the order is therefore invalid. And then you can look at the Article 16 wording again. And the one I'd like to again point out, it's a new, Chris says you're going to shave hairs on this thing, but Part B, removal of street trees, Part B, 30 days prior to the removal date, the department notifies all interested San Francisco organizations and, to the extent practical, all owners and occupants of properties. All interested San Francisco organizations, in fact, the removal site at DPW is an interested San Francisco organization. And it's also set up as an ADA compliant site. So that was a major point there. Going on, let's see, Public Works also falsely claimed that the trees were listed on the website. There's only one tree at 9 Joy Street that was listed on the website. The other one was not. And if you flip the page to where there's an image of like a web page, you'll see the only image that ever occurred on the website was 9 Joy Street, Site 1, starting on 12/17/2019. And again, if you'd like to see this information up front, up close, you can go to the website savesftrees.org. And let's see, how much time do I have left? I'm flying blind here, but
you're okay. Yeah.
Huh?
You're okay. You can keep going.
I'm okay for what, another minute or two?
Yeah, another minute. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to make a comment about removal hearings in general. I've been going to them for the last 18 months, and we actually did a study of all the director's decisions that came out of the removal hearing. Anytime a tree was proposed for removal by the city, that's either by DPW, by a city project, or similar, the director's decisions always came in negative. In other words, the public's protest was denied. So going to a removal hearing is kind of an exercise in futility. The other thing is it's all sort of an inside job. The official director's decision on a tree removal is written up by a Buff staff member, sent to the Buff director's office for rubber stamp signature. In other words, Buff proposes the tree removals, conducts the removal hearings, and writes the decisions. The downside is the director's decision can be appealed to the Board of Appeals for a $100 filing fee plus submission of a brief, a lot of research, and an appearance before the Board of Appeals. A lot of effort, and the Board of Appeals actually rarely decides against DPW. So actually, I think this whole process is actually a little bit slanted towards the city and away from the public. And I think to say that this provides a public forum is not a fair statement. Again, if you'd like to see more on this, say savesftrees.org website. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe
you have 0 questions remaining.
There may have been someone else who was trying to speak, and I may have inadvertently deleted your number in the queue. So if there's anyone who would still like to speak on this item, please go ahead and 1 and 0, and there we go.
You have 1 question remaining.
There we go. All right, you are on. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Joe Butler. I'm an architect and member of the AIA and former vice president of Friends of the Urban Forest. With respect to 9 Joy Street, I would like the letter I submitted by email to apply as well, 27 May 2020, for the same conditions of approval for any removals that are approved. And I would just like to ask the question, how many replacement trees in total will there be for the 7 trees to be removed, the 1 private property tree to be removed if they are all approved, and how many by the length of the right-of-way alongside these lots? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no one else left to speak, then because I took additional comments, I will allow the department to have to answer any of those comments if you so desire.
Hello, yeah. 0 questions remaining.
Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And I forget, did we, were we going to have the architect call in for this second item? I forget if he's called in for this item already.
He just covered, didn't he?
That was one question, because I was going to direct the question about number of replacements. Our urban forestry inspector, Stephen Keller, is aware of that. I think by retaining some of the trees nearby, they've got to balance placement of trees within the right of way to allow for spacing between existing trees. What I can do is assure the public that any resulting decision that comes out of the director's office will clarify the specific number of replacement trees per parcel. So I heard the request and making a note of that, and it'll definitely be part of the recommendation from the director.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Looks like there's one more person who wants to speak.
You have 1 question remaining.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, yes, hi, it's Stephen Antonaris. I'm the architect. Just in general, I'd like to pass on from the owner that they're fully accepting of the conditions proposed by Mr. Butler. And also, they would expect to replace trees as per standard requirements, which is generally 1 per 25 foot of frontage. So, to answer that question. And I guess now that I'm on the line, if you have any other questions I could address. But this is also acceptable, the number 9, the removal of the tree on the lot. And we can save that one to the extent that we can in the right of way. The new porch is designed to wrap around it. So if it works out that, the lower branches can be removed and some of it can be saved, we do that.
Okay. If that is it, then thank you. I don't see anyone else, so I will close this item.
You have 0 questions remaining.
And I believe we're now on to 203175, which is 15, Joy?
Correct. That sounds good. So Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This one will appear in 20 seconds or so. This is order 203175 for 15 Joy Street to consider the removal and replacement of 4 street trees adjacent to 15 Joy Street. As staff approved the removals and the public has protested, this order supersedes order 203082 for the May 11th, 2020 tree hearing, which was continued until today due to a clerical error in the notification process. So this is the 3rd and final parcel and application that are all part of the same ownership again, the development of a lot right now where there's no home or house, and trees conflicting with that potential development. And so in 20 seconds, you'll see a copy of the removal notice for 15 Joy Street, identifying 4 juniper shrubs. So the tree removal notification posting on the right was physically posted on all 4 juniper shrubs. I think they mean left as I see it on screen. It might have been on their right originally. So location 15 Joy Street, site number 1, again, posted for the site. Many of these Hollywood junipers have multiple trunks, so it can be challenging to identify the specific number of trees. We're overestimating just to make sure we're not underselling anything here to the public. So we're listing it as 4 trees due to construction of a new building and front landing and other impacts. Let's see, all the proposed removals are small stature shrub-like trees. At the end of the construction, new replacement trees would be planted. This is a diagram coming up next that shows an aerial photo of the proximity of parcel that is 15 Joy Street, adjacent to the Joy Street public right-of-way, and shows the grouping of where those 4 Hollywood juniper trees are within the public right-of-way. We've put a bunch of notices out there over time. Yep, that's highlighting the location. Thank you for that little highlight. Sometimes we've posted these notices on branches so that they'd be as visible as possible to residents who live on that block. And again, we've had multiple postings due to our rehearing from last month. We've been out there quite a bit, putting a lot of notices up on the trees out there. And these are showing some of the examples of the subject juniper trees. And then the next image, I believe, is the final image, showing the view of it from inside the property, looking uphill. That's looking to the northwest, showing the subject tree. Again, smaller stature at maturity, very, very slow growing, would be replaced with a large stature tree. And we have a comment here that Buff was open to exploring this idea, which is that some community members have commented that the westernmost juniper potentially could be preserved if the front porch's dimensions are adjusted. So we're sharing that information. Now, however, the juniper is very slow growing, and this is an opportunity to replace it with a large stature species that provides greater environmental benefits and certainly enjoyment, pure enjoyment as just being a larger tree. So again, Hollywood junipers are pretty slow growing, but noting here that we'll ask the developer to delay removal as long as possible so the vegetation can serve as screening during construction. And we really will make sure that the public diagrams and comments provided to us in advance of the hearing on the 27th by Joseph Butler is provided to you, the hearing officer, along with the comments from a member of the public, Lance Carnes. We do appreciate the involvement and engagement and the care that they show for the urban forest. So we'll be sure to provide that to you as well. But that concludes the staff presentation for this item. Again, similar to the previous cases, looking at replacement with a larger stature species. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak to this item, please dial 1 and 0 on your phone, and we will let you in. So again, first person, you are up, and you have 3.
You have 2 questions remaining.
To be able to go ahead.
My name is Joe Butler. I'm an architect and member of the AIA and former vice president of Friends of the Urban Forest. Thank you for the comments, Mr. Antonaris. I appreciate that. I would point out to the hearing officer that condition 4 in the letter is that the juniper in slide 12 be retained, protected, and not removed. So if the developer's in agreement with his architect that they can do that, we would appreciate that decision, consistent decision from the hearing officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Take the next person.
You
now.
have one question remaining.
Hello, this is Lance Carnes again. Talking about, yeah, can you hear me okay?
You're on.
This is 203-175, removal and replacement of 4 street trees adjacent to 15 Joy Street. Again, only one tree was posted at that address. And I just want to point out again that since they weren't posted correctly, this matter is not really valid for consideration at this hearing, and the order is therefore invalid. I'd also like to have some, point out some other things. The Public Works claimed that all trees were listed on the website. Is just not true, and you can see the evidence right in front of you there. They claim that there were a number of trees were indicated on the website. They were not. And if you flip the page, you can see the one image that did appear on the website starting on December 18th, 2019. And another thing that really puzzles me about this entire Joy Street project is that it started off as 9 trees on one removal order for the May 11th hearing, and they went to all the trouble to split it up into 3 different removal orders with different numbers of trees on them. And I don't know what the reason for that is. I'm guessing that somehow that'll assist the project going through. I have no idea. The other thing that's odd is that the developer, I think it's called Cullinane Plastering, is relying instead on Buff to push through the removal orders. So splitting them up into 3 parts has really no apparent advantage, except that you now have to hear me not for 3 minutes, but 3 times 9, or 3 times 3, or 9 minutes. And why is Buff working so hard on getting these removals pushed through? From what I've said before, the trees were not correctly surveyed or posted. And my advice to Buff, back up, correctly identify the trees, and notice them on the removals website. You have to follow the rules.
20-second warning, Mr. Carnes.
You owe that to the public. Sorry, what was that? Time's up.
20-second warning. It was a 30-second warning, a little bit late. But you have another.
Oh, I see. Okay. And just a final comment, from the amount of effort Buff has put in on this project, and I've been in communication with them for weeks and maybe more. It seems they're a little too close to the developer, perhaps, and they're not considering the desires of the Joy Street neighbors or San Francisco citizens. And again, you can see more about this on savesftrees.org. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person.
You have 1 question remaining. You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, you should be able to go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hello, it's Stephen Antonaris, architect again.
Yep. Okay.
This is actually responding back to Mr. Butler, who clarified all of his conditions, included that juniper, and the owner developer is not confident that can be saved. That stairway needs also excavation around it. It's a concrete stair, and there's also clearances. It becomes an ADA stair, this stair, after it's built and connected to the existing one. So I'm afraid we can't save that juniper without probably chopping it up and making it not a picturesque tree anymore. And I think I agree with the Bureau that statuesque tree there, something that's more street friendly is more appropriate. The last point I'd like to make is Joyce Street is wonderful and lovely the way it is because it's really a wild space largely. As was pointed out, a lot of the privets have sprouted from just, roots or trunks cut. It's not been maintained. In its new phase of being having 3 houses along there, it's going to become more an urban street. It's still going to be wild-like, but we will need trees in there that don't obscure clearance down to the ground. So they'll have to be more street tree-like. And again, the owner wants to emphasize they're willing to put in as many trees as they remove, or perhaps more if the Bureau finds that desirable. I think that's it. The only other point I'd like to make is that this construction will not interfere with the right-of-way at all, and they'll be doing all the excavation from Holiday, from up down to Holiday. So the impact should be minimized. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other people commenting. Does the department want to address any of the comments and speak again, or move on to the next item?
No further clarifications at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no comments, and we'll close this item, and we'll now go on to item number 203176.
Thank you. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This item, which is going to be pulled up momentarily, is to consider the removal with replacement of 1 street tree adjacent to 403 28th Street. Urban Forestry staff has approved the removal and the public has protested. And this is again Order 203176, which supersedes 203083, which is originally scheduled for May 11th, but was continued due to a clerical error. So we're hearing this item today for the first time. And so as we move on to the next slide, this is removal of 1 tree. The species is referred to as Victorian box. The Latin name for that is Pittosporum or Pittosporum undulatum. And we have a Google kind of before and after photo. This species has been getting impacted, we believe, not just we believe, but the UC Cooperative Extension has talked about something known as Victorian box tree decline, meaning that it may be related to drought impacts, cumulative impacts from drought. So we're looking at a diagram right now here on screen, new construction on top, location of existing tree is where the garage will be shifted. If we could back up though to find the photos just of the tree itself, we prefer to talk about the overall condition of the tree first and then move into a description of the site and the reasons for the applicant pursuing removal of the tree. So generally speaking, several years ago, this tree was in better condition, and it's nothing that the property owner has done here to cause harm to the tree. So the image that'll come up in a moment is a really good one, showing a before photo on Google Street View from November of 2017, and then an image taken in the last several months. And you can see the difference in the greenness or the vigor of the canopy. One other thing to note, just the other factor, a main factor in approving this tree for removal, one is the decline in canopy. So this very low reduced vigor combined with, unfortunately, a lot of sidewalk damage. And so the next image will show you how much that sidewalk has been erased due to tree roots impacting infrastructure. So this image shows you overall what that looks like. So even if there's no construction or proposed garage or driveway, making these repairs is going to further stress this tree. And so when you look at the existing condition of the canopy, add on to that the necessity either for Public Works, because it would be our responsibility, or the applicant, if they're completing their project, these repairs are going to heavily impact the tree. Even if we were to open up and create a really large tree basin, these roots are still going to get cut and pruned and further stress the tree. One other thing to note is that there's low voltage lines and high voltage lines above the canopy of the tree. So to some degree, we've gotten what we can out of this tree. Generally speaking, for garages, we have lost trees to the installation of a new garage or driveway curb cut. This is a little different in that the home already has an existing driveway and curb cut, and the proposal reason for removal on the application is that there's work being done on the house, which the applicant can speak to, that would require or be preferable to move the garage and driveway to a different location, which conflicts with the tree. At the staff level, if this tree had the vigor it had several years ago and it did not have extensive damage to the sidewalk, our staff level decision would be to deny the request to remove a tree. Unfortunately, as we look at this tree and the site, the tree is not healthy or sustainable. So regarding the overall decision, our recommendation was to approve the tree, and we have, I believe, in our slides an image that shows, yes, we show that there's potential for 2 replacements, or at a minimum 1 replacement with a second tree and or landscaping. So those are the options we've been, if approved for removal, these are the considerations we've been looking at. Now, to really find room for 2 replacement trees, the applicant would need to be vigilant to prevent utilities from being placed in the potential space for that second replacement tree. But at a minimum, the additional landscaping could be installed. So at the staff level, overall, we approved because the tree is in decline, and it will be further in decline once those roots are pruned when the sidewalk's repaired. And then regarding potential replacement options, these are the moving pieces we see before us, with at least 1 tree as able to be replaced by possibly a second with landscaping if the utilities that are placed in the right of way are kept out of the way from conflicting with those potential planting sites. So to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases at the staff level, the decision was to initiate approval of the tree, and during the 30-day posting period, we received a protest or protests, and we've scheduled this for the hearing. And that concludes the staff portion of this presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Department is done. If there's anyone who wishes to comment or speak to this issue, please dial 1 and 0, and we will queue you up. And we'll wait a little bit to see if anyone wishes to speak. Okay, it does not appear that anyone wishes to speak, so I will close this item for comment, and we'll now go on to order number 203180.
Thank you. This is
hold on
Chris.
a second. Sorry, you have 203177. That was one that was pulled, wasn't it?
Yeah. So this is Chris Buck with Public Works. So we noticed there's a inconsistency here with our posting notice. The final agenda item after this one is kind of a duplicate. So we basically won't be able to hear the multiple sites in the Bayview. It looks like on the website agenda, It was posted accidentally as 1100 Connecticut. So the 200 Clarendon, Order 203085, I believe this will be the last item that we hear as part of this afternoon's hearing, due to I think it's just a clerical error. So the next item here is 200 Clarendon, order number 203085. And this is for the removal with replacement of one street tree adjacent to 200 Clarendon Ave, also referred to as 2 Adolph Sutro Way. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. So in this immediate area, I believe it's the UC system, our urban forestry inspector for this case is Susan Nawberry, and she guided the applicant through this process to obtain permission to remove this tree, which was within the public right-of-way. The university management there has removed a number of trees and has a pretty extensive replacement plan for planting replacement trees and revegetating that immediate area. When we do get this image pulled up before us, you'll see the subject tree is actually quite a large blue gum eucalyptus tree. The species is Eucalyptus globulus. It's a very large, tall growing tree, and the trees surrounding it have all been removed. Those trees have been removed in the background, many of them, and it's left this one, well, you could call it like a witness tree. The downside is there's very low vigor. There's very little canopy that exists on this tree, very low vigor, and it's to the side or above the power lines. But with the removal of so many trees to its, I guess it would be north, east, and west, it's really left this tree out on its own, but it has very low live crown ratio, meaning the amount of live foliage compared to the overall height of the tree is just very limited. This also makes it prone to fail because it doesn't have a lot of branches that absorb the wind's energy to dissipate those wind impacts. So just generally speaking, the eucalyptus trees in that immediate area were all showing signs of severe decline over a number of years, likely due to drought. That's what most professionals in our industry have identified that decline as being related to. But relatively straightforward case, very large tree, but again, the university has an extensive planting replacement program, and this tree will be replaced with another large stature tree among many others in that immediate area. But we did go ahead, we posted it for 30 days, and it was protested by the public. And that concludes the staff presentation for this agenda item.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now open it up for comments. So if anyone would like to speak, this is your opportunity. I'll give it a little bit of time so hopefully catch up with the lag. But if you are interested in speaking, please dial 1 and then 0, and you will be recognized. It does not appear that anyone wishes to. Oh, yeah, there we go. All right, good. Hold on just a second, please.
You have 1 question remaining. You have 0 questions remaining.
And you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jillian Keller. I'm a consultant with Horse Science Bartlett Consulting. My client, Morgan, who works with UCSF, asked me to attend this meeting and speak to this tree removal at 200 Clarendon, UCSF. Like was mentioned earlier, other trees in the vicinity have been removed, and this tree is now exposed. There's a history of whole tree failure in this area. this area receives a lot of wind and rain during the storm season, and as a result, the soils become very saturated, and the ability of the roots to resist wind movement is reduced, and it's resulted in the past multiple failures of eucalyptus trees. They impacted buildings, overhead utilities, streets. So just wanted to speak to our assessment and recommendations for the eucalyptus in this area. Unfortunately, given the past history of tree failure, the erosion, the wind, it's our opinion that the tree ought to be removed.
Okay, thank you. Are you done?
I'm done. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will now close this item. It does not appear that there are any other comments on this question. So at this point, we have finished the items on the agenda. I will call now and ask if there are any general public comments on any of the items. This is to catch anyone who may have arrived late. So are there any public comments on any of the items on the agenda? However, if you have already spoken, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is for those who might have come late or who didn't have a chance to speak. So if there's anyone on the line who has not spoken who would like to speak on any of the items on the agenda, please 1 and 0, and you'll be recognized. We'll give it a little bit of time to see if anyone is interested in speaking at this point. Okay, so it looks like no one else is interested in speaking. So at this point, I'm waiting for the magic sound to happen. Okay, if there are no more public comments, then I will close this hearing. So this hearing is now closed. Thank you all for participating and have a good and safe evening.
Thank you.